I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by the wonderful Kali Reis to talk about her Emmy-nominated performance in True Detective Night Country. And starting off in playing Navarro, one of the things that I think is so interesting is that I've heard you talk about feeling like when she was in the military that she operated from a place that was very logic driven, and that where we meet her, it's this really fascinating mixed space where she still has that logic and that instinct, but then it's also so connected to spirituality. And there's this whole other space in her that's been able to open up. And so I was interested in how you looked at her background and her backstory and where she is in the present to find those two different energies that she leads with.
Great question. I love this. One thing I found really interesting, I'm finding really interesting in this whole industry and this art is the fact that I love creating the backstories. And like, I'm such a Virgo when it comes to compartmentalizing, obsessive, and planning. So I'm like, it's natural that having a backstory so I can understand what my character's thinking, feeling, and what they're even little things as far as a zodiac sign or what they did on their eighth birthday is so important to kind of have where you meet them now. I can't tell you where you meet me right now unless I can, you can kind of tell when somebody has a background. So when I found out she was an ex-Marine, I'm like, all right, cool. This is kind of gives her a very solid, logical, practical, very militant, follow orders. But also, I wanted to explore why did she even go into the military? It wasn't like, this is what you do, great family life, and I have a military family. It was like out of necessity. And the backstory, for me at least, was because she's taking care of her sister and all the things that happened up until when she made that spontaneous, very Navarro moment decision. It was just really, really awesome to solidify that, kind of really explore, okay, she did 3 or 4 tours, and how did that affect her? And what was her personality? Like, it couldn't have been, she couldn't be following ghosts in that time. So what we had to really solidify that aspect of her, and then meet her now where she is, and especially being back home. It really touched me in a way where, all right, she's back home to this land that she feels so foreign from, but it's so energetically charged with these stories and just the ancestral part of her that she's still confused about. How can this just become a big jumble of what is Navarro? So it was really important for me to kind of have those contrasts, especially diving into meeting Navarro, not even creating Navarro, was like meeting her. Okay, what are similarities? But what are the differences? Because there's clear differences between who I am and who Navarro is. So it was just really, it was fun doing that. And then like, you get into a wormhole, like, all right, well then what if this happened? What if that? But it's really, it does a lot for me, at least I can say for myself as a performer, to know where she, like even going from scene to scene, where is she and where is she going? Kind of a thing. It kind of just coincides with what at least I do as a performer to understand even scene by scene for this character. So it was fun.
I love that answer so much. And especially you touched upon the idea of for characters coming up with what is their star sign. And you've said that Navarro was definitely a Scorpio to you. Is that something that you gleaned the moment that you read the script? Because she does have that little like stingray that pricks up from time to time.
Yeah, it's fun. I was working with, and I still work with my one of my acting coaches, Sheila Gray, and she has a very interesting, very holistic, very real, very relatable, at least to me and my personal beliefs, a way of teaching, and not even teaching, just kind of bringing things to the surface, understanding your tools. And she never really said to, but I just, we have like different things that we do, different exercises, and I just thought, because I'm so much into that aspect of things, why not? Like personality traits, how is she? Like, I know how I am, I know what things match my Virgo-ness or my Scorpio rising, and just to kind of get used to understanding what that is, I'm like, all right, I feel like I know Navarro and what parts of her I'm familiar with. Oh, that part. I'm like, oh, she gotta be a Scorpio. Like, she gotta be. It was like one of those discovery things that just kind of made it more fun. Like, she has a birthday. Like, we were shooting on Navarro's birthday. I didn't tell anybody, but I was like, oh, it's Navarro's birthday. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. And just building the backstory off of that. Were her birthdays always happy? Were they sad? Does she celebrate them? Does she acknowledge them? So it just kind of, again, kind of snowballed into that. And it just, even if I didn't believe in or wasn't so invested, not so invested, but if I wasn't invested in searching star signs and rising sign into that type of thing, it'd be a cool thing to understand a personality trait of someone, what a Scorpio is or a Capricorn is, just to kind of give that kind of like a mold to kind of play with. And then, all right, so let me really dive into that. So it was just a fun, but I understand that little tail that comes out all the time with Navarro.
But on the opposite side of that little Scorpio tail, there's also a real softness and a real vulnerability to this character, and especially in the way that you've played her. And it sounds like that a lot of that actually came forth because I know you were doing a lot of journaling as the character when you were developing her. And so how
Mhm.
did the journaling help you to kind of find those two juxtaposing energies in a way that lives completely parallel and makes sense as facets of her?
Journaling as somebody else, I journal as much as I can myself, and I know a lot of times when I'm journaling, I'll discover other things or I'll just feel different after I get those thoughts out. So I'm like, all right, let's, after I worked on a background story of a point in her life, let me journal to see how she would feel in those things and just start discovering different personality traits, maybe different triggers. Like she doesn't like this because of that. And it triggers, it reminds her of this, it reminds her good or bad. There's just different triggers to even put that in my subconscious as Navarro really helped with the journaling. So even if there was a scene where maybe somebody said a word, or there was a sound or a color, a smell, as Navarro, I remember she journaled and that came up. Like she can react very subtly or very, in the moment with that. That helped a lot with the little subtleties because Navarro is a character of not many words. She's, a very big thinker, and you really can't read her, but it's hard to play somebody you can't read when, it's really easy to say words and do the big things. The real subtleties of are what gives a character that mysterious, you kind of know but you don't know kind of a thing. But the journaling really helped with those little triggers and those little thought patterns, because you may not know what a character's thinking, but if you know they're thinking, that means you're doing your job as a performer. You're like, all right, well, what the hell is going on in our brain? Not like a dead stare, but like, what are these thoughts? I can't think in a scene, I wonder they're gonna say cut. No, I gotta think about whatever this situation is. And those times, over a 7 month period for a 6 episode, 122-day shoot, those journalings help for me to kind of have some things to tangible to reach on. Like I remember one day that I wrote something, let me go back in it. And then I would go back and see what I wrote as Navarro. I'm like, oh, that's cool. It helped a lot creatively.
I also wanted to talk a little bit about Navarro's relationship with her sister because it feels like a space that both grounds her and uproots her because obviously her sister is really struggling, and so there's everything that swirls up in terms of her own childhood and their relationship together and their history. And then at the same time, it's also the person that knows her the most in the world and has been through everything that she's been through, so really understands her. And so how did you want it to be a space that both kind of creates a little bit of a chaotic energy in her life and brings up certain things from the past, but also something that gives her calmness and makes her feel grounded?
Julia, it was interesting to have her relationship with her younger sister. I'm actually the youngest, personally, youngest of 5 kids, so I don't know what it's like to be the oldest. I'm the baby. So like to switch things on its head, but also to her to be the nucleus. I used her younger sister as the one thing holding her together. When she does want to snap next, maybe she doesn't go as far because she has Julia, just as an example. Also, it can bring a sense of security, a sense of purpose that she has to take care of her sister. Also, a sense of chaos because she does not know what to do with her sister. It's like a little ball of everything. And she brings out the softness. She brings out the fierceness. Like she's so protective, motherly over her sister, but she's so motherly, nurturing over her sister as well. So it was really interesting exploring how one person can bring so much out of this one character, and at a moment's notice, just how Julia's character, you don't really know what's going on. She doesn't even know what's going on. It affects Navarro so much because she wants to help. She knows how to physically help in 3D. If somebody needs to get smacked around, Navarro's right there, and she's gonna lay a smackdown on them. Or if she needs to get real tactical, she knows how to detect. She's a really good detective. She's good at her job, but also she can snap. You know what I mean? So there's these things that she can explore, but it all comes together with Julia and it all falls apart at the same time. And that was really, really interesting to explore as far as like you as a performer and playing Navarro. I didn't really know, and it was fun to know what Navarro's reaction to her sister was going to be. It was like, is she going to fall apart? Like, is she going to be the strong one? It's like, no, she's mush, or yes, she is strong. It was really fun to kind of be in the moment after really understanding their dynamic between who she is to Navarro.
And with that idea of the moments that we get to see her snap a little bit, I love the way that this character was introduced, because the very first sequence of events, we see so many elements. We see the way that she tackles that guy down. We get the sense of there's something that she takes very personally at knowing that he's been abusive to his partner. And so when you have a scene like that, that gives you a lot of layers that you can start building in, that then we get more of a backstory to how did you want to go into filming that very first sequence, because it's such an amazing introduction.
Yeah, it was like the first. This is the first character you get introduced to. I'm like, of course, I'm the first one. But going into this, coming from a very physical background and career as boxing, I'm very aware of my physicality, and I'm very aware that I have a certain athletic build in the present. So that was something that I knew, quote unquote, would be the easy part. But what are the things, like you said, underneath the surface? Like, why is she? There's something behind that. Why is she really, really triggered behind this abusive partner? And just not just because that's just, morally not okay, but like for her, what does that mean? And it really meant for me to establish some sort of strength for Navarro, obviously, but there was something I wanted always to make sure that there's so much under the surface with Navarro, and it's just right here, and it's gonna take just this much to maybe or maybe not reveal itself. So going into that first one, I was like, all right, she got the hat on, this is, got the walk, got the swagger, of course. And I wanted to kind of exude respect and authority with that. But also a person who has a lot of history all into one. Like, she can handle herself. There's nobody there with her. Also, the realism of what really goes on in those kind of remote places where there's who knows when there's going to be another officer, because it's so few in such a big area. There was so many different layers in that, she is very aware of her surroundings. There's not that much crab. Clearly, she knows what goes on in the environment around there. There's a lot of things that I want to make sure we could kind of touch on subtly. But having that guy be 6'4", be so big, compared to Navarro, compared to me, I also wanted to make a point that even if this is before you saw the flashback of her being in the military, clearly she knows how to handle herself. Clearly she's in this position for a reason too.
And as much as you see the authority that she conveys, you also get to see the way that she leads with empathy. There's one way that she's dealing with the guy and another way that she's dealing with the woman. And it's like, let me bring this calmness and this gentleness to the way that I'm talking to you. And so was it important to you that depending on who she's talking to, that you kind of had those two different energies and that you were able to bring that empathy forward a lot in the interactions that she has with people in the town?
Absolutely. And I think that's a testament to her logical side. She has to know her audience. She has to know who she's speaking to. She can't just go in there guns a-blazing at everybody. She's not going to get the answers that she seeks. And she's very logical. She's 10 steps apart in front of people most of the time, unless she's in her little stinger mode. But her end goal is just, she has an end goal of doing what's right, justice. You know what I mean? So when she eyes something like that, it was really interesting to be able to, in a moment's time, see who she's very observant. She takes everything in all at once. So yeah, it was really cool to honestly have all that in one scene, and that she has the empathy. And also when B was kind of like, who's your Akka, like, you can see that she is part of the community, and she's question, but like, okay, what's really going on here? That obviously touched the nerve. So she's gonna have empathy. All right, she kind of sees me, so let me go over here and handle this, because now this has nothing to do with my uniform. This has something to do with community and something way deeper. So it was really interesting. And also just being from personally, I've never been a police officer, but I've been in like security situations where you just have to be, you can't go into situations just with one frame of mind. If safety and justice is what you're seeking, then you're gonna have to be a little bit of a chameleon. It's not being fake. It's just kind of knowing who you're speaking to. Right? Being able to go with the flow. With her little Scorpio watery self.
Right, because even in the episode where she walks into the birthing scene and she doesn't know that that's what she's walking into, that was so interesting to watch her be in a space where she knows that she's not welcome, she knows that she's not wanted, and she's goes into this mode of how can I be helpful? What can I get for you? What can I do? Which is very different to the intention that she walks in on. And so how did a scene like that also just give you this totally different space, like with what you were saying, the fluidity of always just navigating based on what's in front of her?
It's amazing to see like you put Navarro on these very intense physical things, and what shines through is her soft little baby little mushy heart. Like she's such a mush. And that's who I think at her core who she really is. Obviously, she has to have a hard exterior from her background, but it was interesting because at that point in Navarro's life, she is, on the job, police officer, ex-military. She got things in order, and it was jarring to her because she thought she knew what she was going into, and then she had to take up so much information and then add the cultural aspect of it. It was like she knows she's not welcome here, but she's first time ever to be even in the presence of something so intimate and so culturally sound that she has been so from the outside of. So the switch up was interesting, and you got to see her soft side and her contemplating and her just kind of being in the moment, having to make these decisions because as a police officer, that wouldn't really matter. It would be she's here to do a job, let's go kind of a thing. But you saw her empathy. You saw her being like, oh my God, this is my moment to actually be a part of something that I've been longing to be a part of, that I've been from the outside for so long. And it was such a what a scene. It wasn't like, she just stopped by a house to have, and they were cooking. It was such a scene. Like who gets to really witness something like that? And on top of it, she got to see what the land is really doing to people with having these stillbirths. There was a scare. So it was all these different layers, and it was Navarro she has to think on her toes, and she has the ability to kind of step in and out of her position as, you know, police officer. Things are like you have protocol, but she has this duality that she has to walk in both worlds, that she has to make those decisions. And though they may not be what protocol is, it's, the spiritual protocol and also a culture. So it was that scene is one of my favorite scenes, and probably one of the harder scenes that I practiced, like the whole rested for. I said that line, I don't know, 80,000 times to get it right. That was fun too.
I also think that, what you're describing as her mushy side. I love the way that we get to see that come out with Kavik because he almost treats her like a cat. He's like, show up when you want to show up, leave when you want to leave. He doesn't try to entangle himself with her. And through that, it feels like actually she's able to fully be herself because this isn't someone who expects or wants anything from her. She very much gets to set the playbook. And through that, she's able to reveal a lot more of herself. And so, because of the way that he treats her like that, did that give you a lot more space to kind of open her up to her layers underneath?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Also happy to see how Issa created that relationship. It's not typical on screen, but it's very typical in real life. Like there's people that have partnerships where their partner needs to be like, I'm one of them. Like I'm like I can't be caged, not because I'm a wild animal, just because I'm a free spirit. Like I kind of you get comfort, and I can understand this like in a similarity. Like you get comfort in knowing that your person's just like, yo, do you. I understand you have the space, and it kind of gives you the time to choose, and it gives you a chance to be you. So I think Issa did an amazing job creating that. I love Kavik. He's such a, he's almost like a mirror with Navarro in a way where like he has establishment, he does this little thing, but he's such a mush. You know what I mean? They kind of mirror, and they kind of seesaw back and forth. So it was really interesting to have her wise. I found her wise. Like, why is she even into this guy? What does she want from him? Or what doesn't she didn't want anything? Or what is she trying to get? It's because she didn't create a typical, their boyfriend girlfriend, they go on dates. It gave a lot of room for me to have reasons why she does what she does. Why did she go over there? Why did she never finish? Why did she leave? Why did they answered a lot of my whys, at least, and it gave a lot of room for creating. And why does she go there right after she gets herself into that fight after she finds out about her sister? There's a lot of things that I was able to answer or not, and have that creative space with that, versus something that is like a typical boyfriend girlfriend goes on dates, we live together kind of a thing. And even down to the intimacy scene, like there's a lot of things that we can explore that you don't typically see in television or movies from a woman's perspective. Some people took it way too far, but I think that was really smart, just to have another layer of Navarro that you kind of get it, but you again you really don't.
I also feel like that plays out with Fiona Shaw's character, Rose, because they have so many similarities and there's this connection to, these spiritual voices that they clearly are both seeing and hearing and experiencing. But again, neither of them are trying to make the other person be their best friend. They're not trying to like sit around and talk about it in depth, but they kind of just have this unspoken language with one another. So did that also give you certain parallels to the relationship that she has with Kavik, where it's like these are the people that she actually really connects to in these very unique ways?
Yeah, both of those relationships are like those two can sit in silence and not have to say a word, but understand each other. And I think for Navarro, she needs that. She doesn't need the chatter. She doesn't need the let me fill a void, let me fill a space that she needs. She likes the quiet. She likes being by herself. So she can be by herself in somebody's presence. She's all for that. And I think because Rose is such a mysterious character and so is Navarro, I feel like they kind of gravitated towards each other. Clearly Rose has a past, clearly Navarro has a past. And just that the fact that they are very comfortable in their own company is something that I think they gravitated to. She clearly sees that Rose is very educated and a very intelligent woman, and I think Rose sees a lot of Navarro's struggles and potentials, and she can just, you can bring a horse to water, you can't force him to drink, kind of a relationship with them too. And I think Navarro trusts Rose's judgment because Rose is just real. You know what I mean? And on top of it, she sees and hears the same thing that Navarro does. And that's another unspoken language. That's something that Navarro is not understanding. Clearly, Rose has it figured out a little bit better than Navarro. So she just seeks mentorship with Rose.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, in her dynamic with Jodie Foster's character with Liz, she's very closed off to the idea of even being near her, having to talk to her. They're very much forced into each other's paths. And they develop this really beautiful intimacy with each other by the end of the season, where, they're not necessarily going to call each other on a Friday night and tell each other about how their week was, but they have really deep, in-depth conversations and they're very open with each other. And so did the scripts give you a real roadmap of feeling like, okay, I feel like her walls will come down because at each stage it feels important for Navarro that if her guard comes down with Liz, that it has to be earned in some way.
Yeah, that's it. The Danvers and Navarro again, I think they're the biggest mirrors to each other. The fact that Danvers does a lot of work to get as far away from the spiritual, other side, not logical, unexplained world as possible. As far as she's concerned, it doesn't exist because it took so much from her. I don't think it's not that she doesn't see it. She just forces herself to try not to believe it because it's right there in front of her, but she's doing a lot of work because looking at what's right in front of you sometimes hurts. You know what I mean? Sometimes it reveals things that you don't want to see and not ready to see right now. And seeing Navarro is a constant reminder of that's part is real because Navarro is so in tune with that. And Navarro kind of does the part where she's trying to understand, trying to walk in this 3D logical path, which she knows very well, and not really understanding how deep her connection is to that other side. So there's just contrast with them. Was really fun to explore. What Jodie brought to the table with Danvers, every time she made like kind of a choice to make her even more ignorant, even more logical, even more like disrespectful towards the obvious or even culture wise, it made Navarro have to kind of defend. And like she doesn't really want to defend too much because she doesn't really want to go there too much. So it was a fun dynamic to explore. And I think that they are each other, like they see each other. I think Navarro is very, very patient with Danvers because she understands her. She understands she needs time to understand and get to that point. She holds space for her. They cuss each other out, but they hold space for one another. And I feel like, if one of them were in deep trouble, no matter who said what about the other one, they would, jump in a foxhole for one another, take the shirt off each other's back. And I think those are the best kind of partnerships. It was fun because they actually love each other and hate each other at the same time. Oh, it's fun.
I also wanted to ask you a little bit about filming the scenes when Navarro's sister passes away, because I've heard you describe it as that part of the action of anger is just needing to feel something, which feels so relatable because it is it is one of the emotions that everybody experiences during grief and during loss. And the way that it's so instantaneous, you fully understand it with her as well. And so going into those scenes, both when she's at the reception, she first finds out that her sister has walked out of the space and she doesn't fully know what's happened yet, but she's pretty sure. And then all the sequences after where she's enacting this anger and this rage from such a visceral place. How did you want to play it where it's both reflective of her relationship with her sister, but also just that desperate need to feel something?
That was interesting because, like I said, Julia was the last string holding Navarro together. So it was like a plethora of just different emotions. But as you said, anger is one of the emotions. It's the easiest emotions to get to feel. That's one of the. It is. And I'm not a scientist, but it is, I guess, proven it's the easiest, quickest emotion to get to. It's like the anger usually is covers up so much under the surface, and that is Navarro. There's so much under the surface. So she wanted to feel something, and she wanted to feel the pain and everything that she knows her sister walked around with all the time, and that was the quickest way that she could let all that anger. And she knew at that point, at least for me playing that, was just like, it's now it's all or nothing. I have nothing else holding me together, really. So it was more of like I wanted to play it out as a sense of not anger because she wanted to fight. She's not like somebody who just goes around just fighting people. It was a act of desperation to feel something, and she knows she could provoke that. She's a person of quick ideas, and how compassionate she was towards, kind of like it was like the inevitable, when you have a reaction to something that you knew it was going to happen, but you have to react in some way. That's really what I wanted to play. Like it was kind of an inevitable thing. She's been doing everything logically. She really hasn't been exploring the other side too much about it because she didn't understand it. She didn't understand it probably up until the end. So I just really wanted to get that act of desperation, and she just wanted to feel something, and she knew her sister was feeling that pain that she'll never know. The quickest thing is to get angry and feel that physical pain.
Yeah. I love all of this insight and all of these details that went into creating her because it's such a rich character and such a great performance. So I would just want to say
Thank you.
congratulations and thank you so much, Kaylee.
Thank you. Thank you.